Imagine being pulled into a mystery that transcends time, where the boundaries between dreams and reality begin to blur. Mark can't escape the nightmares that haunt him, all centered around an enigmatic house and a shadowy figure beckoning him to uncover hidden truths. With the help of his friend Jenna, he dives into an investigation that reveals dark secrets and a story of injustice, fear, and betrayal. Get ready to join Mark on a journey of discovery and redemption, where he must confront his own demons to free a soul trapped by time. What would you do if the secrets of another life depended on you to be revealed?
Behind the doors.
Mark woke abruptly, his heart pounding as if he had just run a marathon. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he sat up in bed, trying to calm his breathing. The darkness of the room felt more oppressive at that moment, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. In his mind, vivid images from the previous dream still danced like distorted shadows in an old film. He remembered the house, that enigmatic house that haunted his dreams, with its worn walls and corridors that seemed to whisper long-forgotten secrets. "Why am I dreaming about this?" he murmured to himself as he got out of bed, the cold floor making him shiver. Looking out the window, he saw the full moon illuminating the sky, like a solemn beacon that seemed to watch over his thoughts. During the day, Mark tried to ignore the dreams. He threw himself into his daily tasks, but the feeling of déjà vu overwhelmed him when he passed by an old photograph of the house in a local museum. It was a black and white image, faded by time, yet still vibrant with a history he didn't know. He stopped in front of the picture, his fingers itching to touch the frame. The house seemed alive, almost pulsing with an energy that drew him in. "Hey, are you okay?" a colleague asked, interrupting his reverie. "You seem distant." "Yes, just thinking about old things," Mark replied, trying to hide his unease. But the truth was that the image of the house haunted him, as if it were calling him to uncover something beyond his understanding. When night fell, he found himself once again caught in the web of his dreams. This time, the house seemed more real, as if he were actually there, walking through the dusty corridors. A shadowy figure appeared at the door, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The figure stared at him, and in a moment of lucidity, Mark realized that it seemed to be beckoning him inside. "Mark." The voice was a whisper, so soft it felt like a passing breeze. "Come in." He hesitated, fear paralyzing him for a moment. But there was a pulsing curiosity within him, an urge pushing him forward. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I'm waiting for you," replied the figure, the shadow twisting in an almost hypnotic way. "You need to know the truth." With each word, Mark felt the weight of an unfolding mystery, a burden that seemed to settle on his chest. The house wasn't just a setting in his dreams. There was something deeper, a connection he couldn't fully comprehend. He took a step forward, feeling the floor creak under his feet, as if the house were alive and aware of his presence. "I can't. I don't know if I should," he whispered, doubt taking over. "Don't be afraid," said the figure with a voice that was almost an echo. "The truth may be dark, but it is necessary. You are the key. You are." At that moment, Mark woke up, his heart still racing, his face covered in sweat. He sat up in bed, confused and intrigued. What did the figure mean by, "You are the key"? The question echoed in his mind, and he knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. The house, the dreams, the figure. Everything seemed intertwined in a mystery that demanded his attention. He got up, determined to seek answers. "Tomorrow," he thought, "I need to find out more about this house." With a new sense of purpose, Mark walked to the window and looked at the moon, which now seemed to shine more intensely, as if beckoning him to uncover the secrets waiting in the shadows. Mark was sitting at a table in the small cafe where he usually met Jenna, the aroma of fresh coffee and the soft sound of conversations around him, almost making him forget the nightmares that haunted him. He stirred his cup, watching the steam rise and dissipate into the air, like the images of the house in his dreams. When Jenna arrived, her face lit up with a smile that brought a bit of comfort to his restless heart. "Hi, Mark. How are you?" She sat down across from him, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Hi, Jenna. Well, I'm not really okay," he replied, hesitating. "It's about the dreams." "The dreams again?" Jenna leaned forward, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "What happened this time?" Mark took a deep breath, organizing the thoughts that intertwined in his mind. "I dreamed about that house again. But this time, there was a shadowy figure. It was at the door, and it seemed to be calling me." Jenna frowned, feeling a chill down her spine. "Do you think this has something to do with the house's history?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," said Mark, his voice low. "I feel like there's something I need to understand, something that's pulling me towards it." "Let's investigate," Jenna suggested, determination evident in her voice. "If there's a story behind this, we need to know it. The house might have secrets that need to be uncovered." Mark smiled, relieved to have his friend by his side. "Do you really think this could lead us to some answers?" "Absolutely. Let's look through old records. The city has a museum, and maybe there's some information about the family that lived there." The idea sparked a new fire within Mark. "Yes, let's do it. We can go right now." The two left the cafe and the daylight enveloped them. As they walked through the streets of Savannah, Mark felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The path to the museum seemed longer than usual, as if the city were trying to delay them. When they arrived, they were greeted by a friendly staff member who guided them to the local history section. "We're looking for information about an old house that used to be around here belonging to a family that disappeared," Mark explained. "Oh, that." "The house, no one seems to remember exactly where it was," the staff member remarked, with a knowing smile. "They say the family mysteriously disappeared in the 19th century. Rumors of hauntings surround the place to this day." Jenna and Mark exchanged glances, excitement growing within them. They spent hours flipping through old books, documents, and faded photographs. Finally, Jenna found a newspaper clipping that spoke of the family's disappearance. "Look at this!" she exclaimed, pointing to the yellowed paper. "It says here that the family matriarch was accused of witchcraft." "Witchcraft?" Mark repeated, his mind racing. "That might explain the shadowy figure I'm seeing. Maybe her soul is trapped there, waiting for help." "We need to find out more," Jenna said, already grabbing more documents to analyze. "If we can understand what happened to her, maybe we can figure out how to free her." Mark nodded, feeling the urgency of the situation. "I need to know more about this woman. She might be trying to communicate with me for a reason." Night fell as they continued their research, the atmosphere tense and full of anticipation. Mark, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. As they left the museum, a cold breeze swept through the street, making him shiver. He didn't know what awaited him in the coming dreams, but the idea of connecting with the past was becoming increasingly irresistible. "Let's go home and rest. Tomorrow we can come back and see what else we find," Jenna suggested, looking at him with concern. "Yes, you're right, but I can't stop thinking about the figure I saw and what she wants from me," Mark replied, his mind swirling with possibilities. As they walked, Jenna's words echoed in his mind. He didn't know how deep these investigations would lead them down a dark path, but the need to discover the truth was growing stronger, like a direct call from his own soul. And in those hours of research, the line between dream and reality seemed to blur, preparing him for what was to come. Mark and Jenna entered the local library, a red brick building that exuded the history of the city. The smell of old paper and polished wood enveloped them like a welcoming embrace. The tall shelves, filled with dusty volumes, seemed to hold secrets long forgotten. The two headed to the local history section, where Mark felt drawn to a particular shelf, as if an invisible force was guiding him. "Look at this, Mark!" Jenna exclaimed, pointing to a book with a worn cover. "This might be what we're looking for." She pulled the volume, which creaked open, revealing yellowed pages filled with handwritten notes. "History of Savannah, Mysteries and Legends," Mark read, the words echoing in his mind. "I think this might lead us to the house." Focusing, they began reading about the city's former residents, but it was a passage that caught Mark's attention. "Here it talks about a family that disappeared under mysterious circumstances," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "The Hawthorne family. They lived in a house that, according to reports, was full of strange events." "Strange events?" Jenna questioned, leaning closer. "What else does it say?" "It says they were last seen on a stormy night. After that, no one ever saw them again. And the house was destroyed in a fire shortly after. There are rumors that their souls still wander there." Mark's expression grew more serious as he read. "We need to know more. This might be connected to your dreams," Jenna asserted, her determined gaze unwavering. As the hours passed, Mark and Jenna sifted through books and documents until Jenna finally found something even more intriguing, an old dusty diary with pages nearly disintegrated. "Look at this. It's a diary from a woman named Eliza Hawthorne. She was the family matriarch." Mark carefully took the diary, his hands trembling slightly. "What does it say?" "I'm not sure. I'm still trying to decipher it. But it seems she was very worried about something. There are mentions of voices and shadows in the house. And here, it talks about a key that can open a something," Jenna said, her words mixed with excitement and fear. "A key?" Mark repeated, his mind swirling with questions. "Do you think this could be the key to my dreams?" "Maybe. If we can figure out where the house was, maybe we can find this key," Jenna suggested, her eyes shining with a determined light. That night, Mark lay in bed, his mind still buzzing from the day's discoveries. He closed his eyes and soon fell asleep, once again transported to the world of dreams. However, this time, the shadowy figure that often visited him began to transform. He saw its contours shaping until the shadow dissipated, revealing a woman with delicate features, long hair, and a flowing dress. "Mark," she whispered, her voice sweet and melancholic. "I am Eliza. I'm trapped here and need your help." "Help?" Mark repeated, feeling a wave of curiosity and fear. "What happened to you?" "I was unjustly accused. My husband, he didn't believe me. They condemned me, and the house became a prison for me and my family. You can free my soul, but you need to find the key." Mark woke abruptly, his heart racing. He reached into his pocket and, to his surprise, felt something hard and cold. With trembling hands, he pulled out an old key, adorned with intricate details that glinted in the dim light of the room. "It can't be," he murmured, his mind spinning with possibilities. "I have to tell Jenna." Mark and Jenna arrived at what was once the address of the house, but now there was only an empty lot, overgrown with tall, unruly grass. The sunlight filtered through the clouds, creating a heavy and almost oppressive atmosphere. The place seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if the memories of the house were still imprisoned there. Mark paused for a moment, feeling the cold wind blowing, carrying a whisper that seemed to come from the depths of the past. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. Jenna looked around, feeling the same unease. "It's as if the place is alive, as if there's something that still hasn't been resolved." They approached the center of the lot, where Mark imagined the entrance to the house had been. The ground was covered in dry leaves and small branches. He crouched down and touched the earth, trying to feel some connection to what had once been there. The house, it had so many stories. "We need to find out what happened here." "And if the key you found is the answer?" Jenna suggested, her eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and excitement. Mark straightened up, the old key weighing in his pocket like a constant reminder of the journey they were on. "Maybe. That night, in the dream, I felt like the key had a purpose. We need to go back and dream about it again." The day passed slowly, and as night fell, Mark lay in bed, the key by his side. Anxiety gripped him, but he couldn't escape the idea that he needed to confront the mysteries that haunted him. When he finally drifted off to sleep, the world of dreams enveloped him. That night, he found himself in a dark room, a space that seemed out of time. The air was thick, and he felt a presence around him. Then the key appeared in his hand, glowing with an ethereal light. Mark remembered the invisible door he had seen before. With determination, he moved towards a corner of the room where the darkness seemed thicker. Inserting the key into a slot that wasn't visible to the naked eye, the door opened with a creak that echoed like a scream. He entered and found a room filled with old objects, each one pulsing with the energy of forgotten memories. A table was covered with familiar items, a cookbook, a worn doll, and a framed photograph that immediately caught his attention. It was a woman, elegantly dressed in 19th century attire, with a serene look that made Mark's heart race. She's the woman from my dream, he murmured, recognizing her instantly. Who is she? Jenna asked, appearing by his side, her eyes wide with surprise. Do you know her? She is the matriarch of the family. I can feel it, Mark said, touching the frame of the photograph. She needs help. How do you know? Jenna questioned, but the uncertainty in her voice showed that she also felt the connection. Because she's trapped here. I can feel her pain. It's as if the walls of this room hold her screams, her memories. Mark's voice trembled as he spoke, and he turned back to the photograph as if expecting the woman to speak to him. At the back of the room, something caught his attention. A small wooden box adorned with intricate details. Jenna, look at this, he exclaimed, running to the box. With almost reverent care, he opened it. Inside, he found a diary, its pages yellowed and worn. It's her diary, Jenna said, her excitement showing. We can find out what happened. Mark began flipping through the pages, each line revealing a fragment of the woman's life, her hopes and fears. But what struck him most was a passage that spoke of a fateful night, where the woman described a feeling of betrayal and fear, as if dark forces were conspiring against her. She's trying to tell us something, Jenna. We need to listen. The atmosphere around them seemed to change, as if the room was stirring, and Mark knew he had to act quickly. He felt the responsibility of freeing the woman from her prison. But how? What needed to be done? Mark, look, Jenna interrupted, pointing to the photograph. Her expression, it looks like she's asking us for something. Mark nodded, his determination growing. We need to uncover the truth. We can't let this story get lost in time. And so, they decided that the next morning they would search for more clues that would lead them to understand what really happened to the family matriarch and perhaps free her soul. Mark and Jenna met at the small town library, surrounded by dusty shelves and the soft light filtering through the tall windows. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and a faint touch of mold, but this was nothing compared to the anxiety pulsing in Mark's heart. He was flipping through a book about the history of Savannah, his eyes settling on a passage about the witches who had been persecuted during colonial times. Look at this, Jenna, he said, pointing to the yellowed page. It says that several women were accused of witchcraft just for being different, or for having knowledge of medicinal herbs. Jenna leaned closer, her gaze curious. This reminds me of the woman we saw in the photograph. Do you think she... Yes, Mark interrupted. I really believe she was unjustly accused. And if the rumors are true, she disappeared on the night of her sentencing. We need to find out more about what happened that day. The determination in Jenna's eyes was contagious. Let's look for court documents or old newspapers. There must be something somewhere that tells more about her story. Immersed in research, they spent hours in the library, sifting through piles of old newspapers. Finally, Jenna exclaimed, "Here, look at this." She held a yellowed clipping, her hands trembling slightly. It's an article about her conviction. Her name was Elizabeth Hawthorne. Mark read aloud. Elizabeth Hawthorne, accused of witchcraft, disappeared the night before her trial. Witnesses claim she was seen in the company of a shadowy figure. They say those who pursued her never found her. If we do nothing, Elizabeth will remain trapped forever, Mark insisted, his determination burning like a flame. So, what do we need to do? Jenna asked, her voice now firm. Mark took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. We need to find the exact spot where the house stood. The spell might need a sacred space, a place that had meaning for her. Jenna nodded, her eyes shining with the same determination. Let's do this. Let's free Elizabeth. The two prepared, gathering everything they would need for the ritual. Mark felt the pressure mounting on his shoulders, but a part of him was also anxious. He knew this was the only chance to help Elizabeth, and perhaps find peace for himself. Mark and Jenna met at the site where the house once stood, a vacant lot overgrown with weeds and wild plants. The wind howled through the branches of the trees, and a sense of expectation and fear hung in the air, as if the very earth was aware of what was about to happen. With a determined look, Mark held the fragment of the spell he had found, while Jenna set up the few items they had brought for the ritual. Candles, some salt, and a makeshift altar made of stones. "Do you think this will work?" Jenna asked, looking at Mark with a mix of hope and doubt. "I don't know, but we need to try. She needs us," Mark replied, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As soon as the sun set, the night enveloped the lot in deep darkness. They lit the candles and arranged the elements of the ritual in a circle, as Mark recited in a low voice what he had managed to decipher from the fragment. The air seemed denser, and a palpable tension began to grow around them. "I'm here, waiting for you," Mark said, almost in a whisper, as he closed his eyes and tried to connect with the energy around him. Jenna held his hand, transmitting strength and encouragement. Suddenly, heavy clouds began to gather in the sky, and a distant thunder rumbled, breaking the silence of the night. Mark looked up, and his breath quickened. "This isn't good," he murmured. "Let's keep going," Jenna insisted, determined. "She needs us." As they continued with the ritual, the storm intensified. Lightning lit up the sky, and the rain began to fall, heavy and cold. Mark felt a presence approaching, and in a flash of light, the shadowy figure appeared before them, clearer and more threatening than ever. Mark's heart raced, and Jenna squeezed his hand tightly. "You think you can free her?" The shadowy figure laughed, its voice echoing like thunder. "You have no idea what you're facing." "Who are you?" Mark shouted, his voice cutting through the storm. "What did you do to her?" "I am what's left of the pain and suffering she left behind. I am the consequence of her actions," the shadow replied, slowly approaching. Anger and sadness pulsed from its nebulous form. "And you, mere mortals, cannot change the past." Mark felt his courage waver, but a renewed determination surged within him. "You can't stop us. We know the truth. She didn't deserve to suffer like that." The shadowy figure hesitated, as if Mark's words had struck it. The truth is a burden that few can bear. She was condemned, and now you are too. You are what you fear and what you pursue." Mark was paralyzed for a moment, the echo of the shadow's voice reverberating in his mind. "No, that's not true. I'm not like you. I'm here to help her." "Help? You don't know what help is. You are the reflection of everything that oppressed her. To free the woman, you must first face yourself." The wind howled, and the world around Mark and Jenna began to spin. Mark's memories began to intertwine with visions of the past, revealing his own pain, his regrets, and the fears that imprisoned him. He saw the faces of the people he had hurt, the broken promises, the missed opportunities, and among these visions, the image of the woman he so desperately wanted to free. "I am not you," Mark shouted, his voice now full of determination. "I won't let fear control me." With those words, an intense light emanated from his heart, illuminating the darkness around him. The shadowy figure screamed, its form beginning to fade. "You can't ignore me. I am part of you." "And I am more than that," Mark responded, feeling the strength of his decision. He reached out towards the shadowy figure, feeling a deep connection. "I will free her, and myself." The storm began to dissipate, and the shadowy figure, now weaker, started to disintegrate into a dark mist. In the background, a soft light emerged, reflecting the presence of the woman Mark had dreamed of. She looked at him with gratitude, and a sad smile formed on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing like a gentle melody. "Now you can be free." With one final scream, the shadowy figure disappeared, and with it, the fears and regrets that Mark had carried. He fell to his knees, exhausted, as the woman approached and enveloped him in a warm light. A feeling of peace filled his heart, and he knew that he had finally freed not only her soul, but also his own.